This video is sponsored by G2A. Use cashback code DORON for 3% off on Warcraft products. Hello guys, this is Doronsmovies, and today I'll be talking about the Ogres and how they reached Kalimdor. Seeing that they are raised from Draenor and are quite far from their home, I'll cover their history briefly as well. So, without further ado, let's get into the lore. Ogres are a race native to Draenor and can track their lineage back to Grond, the stone giant created by the titan Orgrimmar. Through a very long process, a bunch of species would emerge, one of these being the Gronn, Ogron, Ogres, and Orcs. Even though ogres are commonly known as these dumb brute creatures, they were actually quite intelligent and powerful. For many years, they had strictly ruled over Draenor, and they had a massive empire. Over time, the orcs would rise, the Draenei would arrive, and the ogre empire would essentially descend into a freefall. They had long clashed with the orcish clans and had terrible bad blood between each other, but when the Burning Legion was involved and the first Horde was formed, the ogres were offered a place within the new faction. They were a very valuable asset and were of incredible use to the Horde, well, at least theoretically. In practice, they were actually disloyal members, and even during the wars, some of them led outlaw bands hiding across Azeroth. That is not to say, of course, that there were no loyal ogres and that some of them were not a key part of the Horde, but overall, they were not exactly thrilled. Surprisingly, during the war, they actually played an important role when the war chief Doomhammer planned a surprise naval attack. As the orcs were not famous or too knowledgeable about ships, a few ogres actually helped them a lot as they had maritime knowledge. Through them, ogre juggernauts were constructed, which were massive, heavily armed and heavily armored floating fortresses. So now we have the war ending and the Horde being completely defeated and everyone was scattered, but the ogres were especially in a compromised position. They were now all over the continent with rebellious clans and even a few united ones. They don't really have a home to go back to, but how exactly did they pass the Great Sea? How did they reach Kalimdor? And how did they establish such an influence? There is no exact answer for all of the clans, but for some of them we know definitely. The most surprising factor is that ogres are actually good at building ships and have knowledge of navigating the sea. This is very much the opposite to the general notion that the ogres are just these dumb, brainless brutes. So it is said that most of the ogres actually took the ships that weren't completely destroyed or possibly even harvested lumber and built ships themselves and then sailed to Kalimdor. Now, how did they actually know about Kalimdor and what it was, and how to reach it is unclear. It is most likely that they just went in that direction and hoped for the best. Here, they were on a continent with the orcs that they are on bad terms with, and they have been on bad terms with them pretty much throughout their history, and now they were actively hunted down by the Alliance. They lost a lot of their numbers in these wars, so taking the ships and going where the current takes you doesn't really seem all that crazy in these circumstances. Another part of the ogres is the Twilight's Hammer clan. As they had followed Gul'dan, they betrayed the Horde and set sail for the Tomus. Rand and Maim killed most of them on the orders of Orgrim Doomhammer, and also a lot of them died in the Tomus, but as cho'gall and some of his followers survived, they set sail for Kalimdor as they had heard the whispers of Khatun. Now, one more theory is that some of the ogres followed the goblins, who pretty much roamed around the entire world, the Kalimdor, the Eastern Kingdoms, the islands, and everything in between. It isn't really likely that the entire clans would follow them, but it is definitely possible that many ogres did, as the goblins are small and they have a lot of money, and the ogres were the perfect bodyguards. This could lead them to dispersing all across the world. They could possibly abandon the goblins and then go on their own, or they could just follow the goblins as we have seen in the various cities. So, the definite answer is that most of the ogres reach Kalimdor through their seafaring skills. We have seen on Draenor that the ogres definitely were able to cross the ocean. However, the numbers are really unclear, as there are definitely quite a lot of ogres still left across Azeroth, and there are many even on Kalimdor. Seeing that well, first they were defeated on Draenor, then they lost so many in the war, it doesn't really make too much sense. Some of the clans are even a part of the Horde, and even they are kind of decent in numbers. In my opinion, it doesn't make a lot of sense how prevalent they are on Kalimdor, but at least we know that they reached the continent before the orcs and the humans through their seafaring skills. Thank you for watching. Do check out how powerful necromancers are by clicking on the screen, and check out the second channel, Doran's Academy, for videos on real world history and science. See you next time.